Okay, today we're going to be talking about samples and population. There's a lot of vocabulary and story problems, so plan on writing words instead of numbers for today. Our target for today is I can determine if a sample is a representative sample. So we have four main vocabulary words: bias sample, random sample, representative sample, and population. The first word is population. A population is every single person or item being looked at. So if I wanted to study all of the wildlife in Box Elder County, then I would start by looking at all the different possible animals, and then every single animal is in the county. Now that would be really, really hard to look at every possible animal in the county. So maybe I'm just looking at the population of elk, and I'm going to look at every elk in the county. Again, that's really, really hard to find every single elk in the county. They move around, they don't just stay in the county, they're not tied up to ropes, whatever. So instead of doing that, we're going to do a sample. And a sample is part of the population. So it's the part of the population that you're actively looking at. Because we can't look at every elk, but we could maybe, capture some of the elk and see how they're doing, and then that would tell us more about the population. So we're just looking at a small sample. If we're talking about the school, every student in the school would be considered a part of the population, but a sample would be the students in my class, or a sample of the school. Now there's different types of sample. The first type I want to talk about is a biased sample. A biased sample is when you have bias. So if I were to ask only the kids wearing hats if they think hats should be allowed at school, that's going to be biased, because the kids wearing hats obviously think hats should be allowed. If I were to ask only the students who choose to sit on balls in my classroom if we should be able to sit on balls, I'm going to get some bias that doesn't exist necessarily. Other people might hate the balls and not be sitting on them, but if I'm only asking kids in balls, I'm not going to know truly what the whole population thinks. So a biased sample is when you pick the people to ask based upon a specific characteristic they share, and that's going to create some bias. So another really common example of bias here at Harris is when students are mad about something, and they'll often ask only their friends what they think. And they're like, well, all of my friends think the same way I do, therefore this is bad. And they don't realize that people who are not their friends might think differently. So beware of bias. Our second word is representative sample. Representative sample is when the sample is chosen to match the characteristics of the population. Some examples of representative samples. If the school is 10% Hispanic, then when we're choosing our sample, we make sure we have 10% Hispanic in our samples to make sure that their voices are heard. Or if our school is 2% non-binary, then we would choose our sample to have 2% non-binary. Whatever it is we're looking at, we want the general population percentages to match our representative sample. And there's a lot of ways you can do this. Often you're going to choose your sample using some sort of rule and make sure that your population match what the demographics of your population and the demographics of your sample are the same. That's a representative sample. Our third type is random sample. And a random sample is when everyone has an equal chance of being chosen. And you can often choose random. You draw names out of a hat. You have computer-generated numbers. A random sample is based upon everyone having the exact same likelihood of being chosen. So if we're talking about elk in Box Elder County, some of your biggest elk would not be as likely to be chosen because they're a lot harder to even locate. They're really good at hiding. If you're talking about people here at Harris, if I were to give every student at Harris a number and then randomly select 10 of the numbers to talk to, that would be a random sample. Okay, and random samples tend to be the best because they give you a truly look at what's really going on with the population. So, three types of samples we have are biased sample, a representative sample, and a random sample. The population is everybody, and if you were to design a survey, there's a lot of ways you can design a survey, and it's based upon which kind of sample you want. To design a survey, You could ask every third person in line. That would be more of a representative sample. You could assign everyone a number and pick a specific number of numbers. That would be random. You could only talk to your friends. You only talk to your friends and ask them what they think. That would be biased. So there's a lot of ways you can design a survey depending on what kind of survey you're trying to conduct. You can do any of them. Have a great day.